I'm Will, and I just found out that my whole life was a lie. It's been a lot to process, especially because I found out the truth about my family. I've gone, in one night, from working in a mansion to owning it. Let me start at the beginning. I've been living among the Dupont family since I was a few years old, but I've never been a part of their circle. Gerard Dupont is the head of the family, a business magnate who came from old money, and his wife Olivia was a fashion designer who also came from a prestigious family. Their two kids, Rupert and Iris, have always been cold to me, even though we all lived under the same roof. The reason for that is my parentage. I just wasn't the same as them. I never knew my mom, and my dad also passed away when I was very young. Thinking back, my earliest memories are from the guest house of the Dupont estate, where my dad and I used to live. He worked as a housekeeper, managing everything needed to keep the vast house running. However, he passed away in a road accident when I was 7. Ever since then, I've been taken under the wing of Gerard Dupont. He's taken care of my schooling and treated me with kindness and respect. Of course, that never meant that I was a part of the family. We never went out together publicly, especially to the fancy events that Gerard was expected to be at. Olivia, his wife, as I mentioned, was usually quite busy with her work and treated me with a cold dignity. However, Rupert and Iris were the bane of my existence. They never gave me a single moment to forget that I was an orphan. When Iris, Rupert, Olivia, and Gerard went out together, I would often be left alone at home, facing mockery from the two siblings as they left. "Ollie, are we forgetting someone?" "Oh no, I don't think so, Rupert." "Were you saying we should bring the housekeeper along?" Things like that, small jibes, crappy stuff. They were older than me, yet picked on me like they were little kids. Even though we live in the 21st century, where people are judged by their capability, I was still made to feel inferior because I didn't have an illustrious family. I'm not painting them all with the same brush, though. Mr. Dupont was really nice to me and never tried to bring me down. Early childhood was a struggle against Rupert and Iris, but once I became a teenager, things got even worse. I went to the same private school that they attended, paid for by Mr. Dupont. But everyone there was just as prissy as my two siblings. Despite being raised in a mansion, I still lived life like a normal person. I did my dishes, worked on my own, and even had a part-time job. People at the school saw it as cringe to do these things, and I was relentlessly bullied. A lot of these rich kids were even more frustrated by how well I did in class. I realized that the level of education and networks we were being given shouldn't be taken for granted, so I always excelled in my classes. Compared to how Iris and Rupert had coasted through school, I was viewed as a brilliant kid who had the potential to genuinely excel. Due to this, Olivia also began to make passive-aggressive comments about my lack of class and style. One day, she even let the truth about my parentage slip to the teachers during a meeting. After that, it spread like wildfire, and the bullying got even worse. It was her defense mechanism since I had started outperforming her kids. I'll be brutally honest, Iris and Rupert were both as dumb as a bag of rocks. It's purely because they've never had to work or think for themselves, but their whole personality was their upper-class privilege. Without her monthly trips to Ibiza, Iris had nothing to talk about. Without his Rolex, Rupert couldn't hold a conversation for longer than a minute. After their fancy Harvard degrees, they both started working. Iris began to model for Iris fashion line, while Rupert worked in the finance department of one of Mr. Dupont's companies. I started fighting more and more with the three of them, and Gerard was often too diplomatic. He would never scold Rupert or Iris, and he definitely never raised a finger against Olivia. Eventually, he asked me if I would be comfortable moving back to the guest house. This was the week before my 16th birthday. "All right, Will, I wanted to speak to you in person." "Yes, sir. Is everything all right?" "Well, I can see that there's a lot of friction in the family. I hope you know that I can't check the behavior of Rupert and Iris 24/7. I think you would feel better if you began to live in the guest house. Of course, I won't charge you anything, and maybe instead of working part-time like you do right now, you could become the housekeeper. I've never had anyone who could do the job right, but I feel like you would be the perfect candidate." "Amazing, Mr. Dupont. I think that would be the best for everyone." While I agreed to it, I found the whole situation disheartening. Instead of elevating me to a position of respect in the family, Mr. Dupont just wanted me out of the way. In a way, I also felt like the role of a housekeeper was a bit tone-deaf. Sure, the pay was great, and I enjoyed the work, but Rupert and Iris had a field day with it. The two of them would often mock me and say that I was finally back in the right place. That incident made me feel more alone than ever because my adoptive father was the only person who seemed to ignore my lack of background. Everybody else from that family barely hid their contempt for me. Every cloud has a silver lining, though. I began to live like a real adult and made friends outside of school. While I was really young, the position of housekeeper meant that I was in charge of a lot of people on the estate. I had to learn to assert myself and get things done. At the same time, living alone meant that I had the free time to learn things on my own. I didn't spend my free time partying or eating out like my step-siblings. Instead, I taught myself to code and began developing an app that would help the employees of places like mansions, country clubs, and hotels find work and build their profiles through customer feedback and reviews. I approached Mr. Dupont about my idea, and he was super proud of me. The rift that had formed after I moved out seemed to vanish, and I began to see the person who had helped me when nobody was there for me. Don't get me wrong, despite all the fights with his family, I have always felt a sense of gratitude to Mr. Dupont for taking me into his family and paying for my upbringing. For one whole year, he helped me get my app off the ground. I was mentored on everything from securing funding to hiring people to work for the company. By my 18th birthday, I was running a company that was backed by the Dupont Group and had already found interested clients across the United States. I felt myself growing outside the label of the housekeeper's son, and I couldn't have felt prouder. With this success, you can imagine that the terrible trio weren't exactly happy. Olivia belittled my work, calling it a silly idea, while Iris and Rupert both tried to focus on the fact that I hadn't gotten a college degree and, in fact, didn't think I was going to go for one. However, their insults got to me less and less as my life opened up outside the Dupont estate. I had moved past seeking validation from my foster family, but not everything was positive as Mr. Dupont's health began to deteriorate. He had been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, despite his health and young age. The best doctors in the world couldn't do anything for him, and all we could do was work towards alleviating the symptoms. This period showed me that I wasn't the only one suffering at the hands of Olivia, Rupert, and Iris. Once, when I had gone over to get some papers signed by him, Olivia burst into his office and began to speak about a massive gala that was going to take place in Milan. "That sounds great, dear, but I don't think I would be able to make it." "Oh, but come on, honey. Iris will be on the ramp for the main event, and Rupert will also take some time off to come and watch. You have to come." "But, sweetheart, the doctor recommended bed rest for a while, at least until the new trial medication wears off." "HMP, fine. I guess the three of us can go alone, although I really think you could have made it." For a few days after that conversation, Olivia was in a sulky mood and snapped at every little thing. Despite battling with his diagnosis, Mr. Dupont had to deal with a family that provided zero support. Eventually, Olivia left for Milan and Mr. Dupont was alone at home for a few weeks. He couldn't go to work anymore, and the helpers he had didn't know him personally. During this time, he invited me to live in the main house with him and speak about expanding my business. I still look back fondly on that time. Mr. Dupont had a way of speaking to someone that made them feel heard and understood. The massive age difference between us didn't matter. All that he was concerned with was the quality of my ideas and the passion I brought to the table. The week that everyone else was in Milan, I got to know Mr. Dupont's personality and self better than I ever did before. A few days before Olivia and her children were set to return, I celebrated my 18th birthday. I kept things low-key and went out with a few of my friends from the estate in the afternoon. In the evening, I sat down with Mr. Dupont in his study. He opened a fine bottle of whiskey and offered me a drink. While I kept sipping tentatively, Mr. Dupont downed 3 glasses. He was getting tipsy, and in his openness, he revealed the secret that changed my life. "Will, I've known you since you were a little kid, and I wanted you to know that I'm genuinely proud of the man you've become. Your company is going to take off, I just know it. But apart from that, you're smart, kind, and humble." "Why, thank you, Mr. Dupont. That means a lot. I also want to thank you for giving me the opportunities that you did and for taking me under your wing." "Oh, please, enough with Mr. Dupont. I remember when you were a kid, you used to call me Uncle Jerry. I owe you a lot, kiddo. I haven't done right by you, and it was all because of those snakes. I'm not following you, mister. I mean, Gerard, I think you've done more than enough for me. I was never your responsibility. You were, Will. I can't take all this gratitude from you when you don't realize how terrible I am. If I just had the guts to stand up to Olivia, You would be the heir to this whole place, as you should be. Gerard, I think you've had a bit too much to drink. You don't have any obligation to give me this place. Besides, I'm not even related to you. You are, Will. Oh God, you are. You deserve so much better. That's how I found out I was a Dupont as well. Gerard stumbled towards a drawer, opened his safe, and took out a birth certificate. This is how I found out my mother's name Leslie. And this is how I found out my real father's name Gerard Dupont. For a moment, I was dumbstruck. When I looked up, I saw Gerard with tears in his eyes, and he kept apologizing continuously. I comforted him and sent him to bed, although he promised to tell me the whole story the morning after. That night felt like an eternity. I was going through a million different possibilities in my head. I couldn't bring the connections together. The only thing that started making sense was the meanness Rupert and Iris showed towards me, and the disdain Olivia had begun to show for me. I guess they must have known the truth since I was born. The next morning, Gerard Dad, I still feel confused about what to call him, woke up and told me about everything chronologically. Olivia and Gerard had a marriage of convenience since the two of them both needed to marry into prestigious families. While Gerard was against it, his dad forced the marriage, threatening to cut him out of the Dupont group. Ever since they got married, the marriage has been cold and dead. Rupert was born to carry on the legacy, while Iris was, to put it simply, unplanned for. Olivia and I never got along. After Rupert was born, I knew she was seeing other people, but I wasn't even angry. Honestly, I was apathetic to the whole situation. Will, your mother was the woman I truly loved. About my mom, where is she? What happened to her? Well, that's a sad story, but I'll try to explain it to the best of my ability. So, she worked on the estate as a chef, and we both liked each other, and soon we started dating. Olivia knew, but she didn't care either. Our respective lovers were open secrets. However, everything changed when we found out that Leslie was pregnant. Things went for a toss. Yes, I'm assuming succession became an issue. Rupert and Iris' fortunes would be threatened. Oh, it wasn't just that, it became a matter of reputation for Olivia. Obviously, your birth couldn't be explained away if Leslie was still in the picture. Olivia didn't want the world to know our dirty secret. Oh God. I see it, she's always been particular about background. She doesn't even speak to people at the country club if they're not from a particular family. She's always been like that. It's one of the differences between us that drives me mad. But something terrible happened. There were complications during your birth, and Leslie passed away. Oh my God. It hit me like a truck, and I was in a fog. Olivia used this against me and convinced me that I shouldn't take you into the family. She worked to hide any evidence that could have made it to the media. The man who took care of you was paid a hefty sum by Olivia to be your father. Olivia threw her influence around, and the paperwork was done, and you weren't a Dupont, technically. However, I still have the proof with me, including your birth certificate. So the person whom I called Dad wasn't really my father all this time? Yes, he was kind enough to take you in, but there wasn't anything to it. When he passed away, Olivia wanted to put you up for adoption so that you would be out of her hair, but I finally put my foot down. I threatened to divorce her if she didn't let you stay with us. After all, you were my son, if not hers. Eventually, we worked out the arrangement that had been going on your whole life. Your real birth wasn't acknowledged, but I was still able to watch over you and provide you with the best possible opportunities. I suggested you live in the guest house because I didn't want you to be bullied constantly by Rupert and Iris. The housekeeper role was just a pretext so that Olivia didn't raise her eyebrows at giving the guest house to you. I'm sure she would have said something about how I was being excessive if I just gave you the keys. She's always been nitpicky about our agreement. I guess she was under the assumption that I would put in the minimum amount of resources required for your upbringing until she could ship you away when you turned 18. Did Rupert and Iris know about this? I was thinking about it last night. Maybe all the bullying was because they were insecure. I mean, they've never been close to me and I never knew why. Did their mother tell them who I really was? Bah. Those two would have been terrible to you, even if you were really the housekeeper's son. You and those two had the same schools and the same chances to succeed, but they wouldn't be able to survive unless I or their mother made opportunities for them. I don't think Olivia told them that you were my son. I feel like I failed them, but most importantly, I feel like I failed you. This revelation was tough to move beyond. The two of us decided that it would be best to play dumb when Olivia and her kids came back. After that, Gerard was going to try and work on a succession plan that would give me power within the Dupont group. We were going to move carefully to make sure Olivia didn't notice any red flags. As for Rupert and Iris, they wouldn't figure out we were working against them unless we posted it on Twitter, ha ha ha. However, Gerard recommended that I join college and make the most of 4 years of fun. He had faced battles in the boardroom and beyond, and he could already see me getting burned out from all my work. With that, Gerard bought out my company, adding it to the portfolio of things that he managed, and I went into college as a millionaire. Those 4 years were amazing and gave me a fresh perspective on life. I realized that not everyone who was born with a silver spoon in their mouth was the same person. I decided to pursue an undergrad at Wharton and learned from the best of the best. The professors there filled any gaps I had in my knowledge, and I also learned more about living and working with others. By my final year of college, I had made it on the dean's list, gone to parties, and spoken to people all across the country. If I had just stuck to building my company, I would have eventually plateaued with my work. After college was over, I decided to work for a consulting firm while also taking a position at Gerard's company. I would shadow him and see how he worked, something that Rupert was technically supposed to do. However, he said that it wasn't necessary since he was doing well. I saw his work reports. He was barely getting by in his finance role. I also spent a lot of off-work time with Gerard, and we got to know each other better. The two of us talked about a wide variety of topics, and I began to really understand how he had managed to keep his business empire running. However, our relationship was, and still is, complicated. I have had a lot of trouble considering him as my biological dad due to how messed up my upbringing was. In a way, I see how he couldn't have chosen between me and his real family, but it was obvious that he didn't hold Olivia in high regard. As for Rupert and Iris, I began to understand that they were victims of their environment and an overbearing mother who never said no. Things took a turn for the worse as Gerard's health complications increased. At some point, we knew that he was going to be bedridden and unable to continue on as the head of the Dupont group. However, Olivia was certain that Rupert would take on the role. Things were reaching a boiling point, as Gerard didn't commit to stepping down from his position and Olivia grew suspicious about it. One of the things I hated most about her was how she served her own interests by pretending to be concerned for others. Gerard told me about a conversation he had with her regarding a succession plan. I think I have a few years left. I don't have to stop right away, do I? But darling, you're ready to move on. I think you should focus on your health right now. Besides, Rupert is old enough to take over, isn't he? Olivia, where was this when I didn't want to go to that gala all those years ago? Or after that when I couldn't make it to dinner with your brother? Or just last month when I said no to having a party at the house? Please, don't act like you care. Oh, but I was just looking out for you, darling. When she needed to be, she could be sickly sweet. By this time, I had gotten really close to my biological dad, and he felt comfortable about the future of the Dupont group in my hands. We were finally going to speak to Olivia and her kids about the truth and reveal everything we knew. A family meeting was called. Everyone had to drop what they were doing and meet back at the Dupont estate. Iris came back from a shoot in Berlin, while Rupert flew in from the New York office. I could sense Olivia's mood. She was as bright as sunshine. She was even nicer to me than all people. I guess she thought that everything was in place for Rupert to take over. Honestly, if I didn't exist, I can see what life would have been like for Gerard after he retired. He would become an afterthought in his own house, but things didn't work out that way. During the meeting, everyone got settled into the living room. With bated breath, Rupert looked expectantly at Gerard until I walked into the room. Looking at each other quizzically, Rupert and Iris began speaking. Hey, what are you doing here? This is a family meeting. Yeah, just because you're working for Dad doesn't make you special. You may not be the housekeeper anymore, but you're not family. The two of you, that's enough. Gerard's exclamation silenced the whole room, and then he spoke. Rupert, Iris, I'm not sure if your mother ever told you, but Will is your half-brother. You need to be respectful and welcoming. Come on, Dad, that's a joke, right? Yeah, Dad, wasn't he the housekeeper's kid? No kids, you see, Olivia and I. I'm not sure that they need to know about how this happened, Gerard. There's no other way to explain it. They need to know. I had an affair with another woman. Will was born to her, but she passed away during childbirth. Dad, really? What about Mom? Baby, well, your mother and I have never been close. Our marriage was one of convenience, and I can't remember a moment when we were in love. This was a lot to take in for Rupert and Iris. I guess they were the only ones who had been kept in the dark about everything. After a few minutes, Gerard went on. Ahem. Anyhow, I wanted to say that what has really impressed me with the work he has done on his own ventures, as well as within the Dupont group. I know it may come as a shock to the public and our stakeholders, but I want him to take over operations when I'm too unwell to go on. What? Dad, this is insane. Sure, whatever, he's your kid, but how can he deserve all this? I deserve it a lot more than you, Rupert. I've done more for the Dupont group in a year than you've managed in 5. I hate to be blunt, but he's right, Rupert. I gave you a lot of opportunities to prove yourself, and you didn't take them up. Gerard, this is a disgrace. What will people say? Well, I guess we'll find out. Olivia, you can agree or disagree with this decision, but it's my decision. It's final. The tabloids can do what they want with it. Olivia sensed that Gerard wasn't going to back down. She glared at me and stormed out of the room. The next few months were involved in creating a transition for my role as the new head of the Dupont group. However, Rupert and Iris were too humiliated to keep on good terms with their dad. Olivia, realizing there was no use for her marriage anymore, filed for divorce. She cited emotional trauma from Gerard's affair with Leslie, and her legal team tried to paint me as an emotionally manipulative person who had taken advantage of Gerard's guilt to take over the company. Naturally, the tabloids had a field day with all this. The headlines were like, Dupont Group's new fire starter is an affair baby ... Olivia divorces Gerard. Naturally, the Dupont Group's PR team was working overtime to keep our stakeholders happy. I wasn't going to take over at such a young age, but I had proven myself on multiple projects. People inside the company trusted me, and a lot of people came to me personally to express their relief that Rupert wasn't going to be the new face of the company. The divorce kept rolling on and got long and messy. Olivia moved out and took Iris with her, but she was struggling with a losing battle. Gerard had the best lawyers in the world on his side, and he wasn't going to back down. Locked into a corner, Olivia went out and did an interview where she publicly slammed me and my dad, making us both out to be monsters. While I hadn't been involved in all the legal fights, this was the last straw for me. I filed a defamation case against Olivia and had more than enough people to back me up. I won the case, and Olivia had to publicly retract her statements. Things didn't look too good for her, and people began to turn against her when it came to the divorce too. Olivia's fashion line took a hit, and a lot of her business faltered. This case had become highly publicized, kind of like that Johnny Depp and Amber Heard thing. Thankfully, it is not as large scale as that. Gerard always made sure to stay low-key. Just last month, the divorce was finalized on really favorable terms. Obviously, the alimony was still an obscenely high amount, but Olivia didn't get any controlling stake in the Dupont group or the house. Those were the two things she was aiming for. Gerard has come to terms with Rupert and Iris' coldness, and he doesn't seem to regret his decision. We both still live in the mansion where I was raised. I'm taking care of my father due to his illness, and obviously things are tough, but there's a lightness around him that I've never seen before. I guess the burden of an unhappy marriage was something that he was so used to. A life without pressure seemed alien to him. As for me, I'm doing my best. My life story is weird and definitely not ideal. Sometimes I still look back on it all and wonder where I would have been if I didn't know the truth. I try to shake myself out of it though. There's no use thinking about what ifs. Besides, being the heir of the Dupont name does have a lot of advantages, and I'm definitely enjoying those. It's not about the net worth or all the assets Gerard has, but more to do with the fact that I can see myself building a legacy and improving. I went from having an inferiority complex about my birth to realizing my true potential. The same people that used to torment me in my childhood now aren't even in the same league as me. I still haven't unpacked everything. Like I said before, I never knew about my mom or her side of the family. Even though Gerard and I are close, I still can't see him as my father, more like a mentor. What I'm going to try to focus on now is finding these lost bonds. I have some details about my mom's family, and I want to reach out to them. For the first time ever, I feel really certain about my identity. Sure, I wasn't a Dupont for 18 years of my life, but I was still the same bright kid. A name doesn't change anything.